On April 8, 2026, HYBE and Bellift Lab confirmed that Lee Heeseung, the main vocalist and center of ENHYPEN, would be re-debuting as a solo artist, but the name on the profile wasn't the one we knew. It was Evan. In an instant, the narrative of one of the industry's most prominent boy group members was rewritten. The company introduced Evan as an all-rounder vocalist with a trendy, sophisticated tone, framing this as a deep artistic evolution. To understand why the name change feels so controversial, you have to look at the timeline, because this didn't happen in a vacuum. Just less than a month prior, on March 10th, Bellift Lab dropped a bombshell statement that Heeseung would no longer continue activities with ENHYPEN. At the time, the agency claimed the decision followed lengthy discussions about the group's future direction and his personal plans, stating he would stay under the label but pivot to solo work. For fans, that was already a hard pill to swallow. Seeing a core member exit a top-tier group mid-promotion cycle is rare and usually signals deeper internal conflict. But the reveal of the name Evan escalated the situation from a sad departure to a confusing identity crisis. The official explanation was that the name represents an alternate dimension of his identity and the essence of his musical artistry. But for a public that had invested years into the name Heeseung, it felt like an unnecessary severance. It raised the uncomfortable question: why does an established idol with massive brand recognition need to change his name to go solo? Is this artistic freedom, or is it something else? The internet, as expected, did not hold back. The moment the news broke, social media platforms became a battleground. The reactions were split instantly, and the discourse turned nasty very quickly. On one side, you had netizens who were genuinely baffled, questioning the logic behind discarding a famous stage name. The criticism was sharp and dismissive, with some comments mocking the name Evan as generic or forgettable. There was a palpable sense of cynicism from the general public, with some going as far as to predict failure, arguing that without the ENHYPEN brand attached, he was starting from scratch. The sentiment, "he really thinks he is going to be a successful soloist," trended in certain circles, reflecting a harsh reality of the industry where group stans often doubt a member's ability to stand alone. This negativity was fueled by the perception that the name change was an act of arrogance or a desperate attempt to distance himself from his past, leading to accusations that he didn't want to be associated with his former group members anymore. However, the narrative took a sharp turn when longtime fans stepped in to defend the artist, revealing layers to the story that the general public and casual listeners had completely missed. According to dedicated fan accounts, Evan wasn't a random name picked by a marketing team. It was his English name, chosen with his mother when he was a child. This context changed the conversation for many, shifting the tone from confusion to sentimentality. Fans flooded social media with receipts, pointing out that he had signed his name as Evan on multiple occasions in the past and had even released his first solo song, Dial Tragedy, under that moniker while still in the group. They drew comparisons to industry heavyweights like Suga and Agus D, arguing that this wasn't an erasure of Heeseung, but a revelation of a more authentic self that had been hidden behind the group concept. For these fans, this was the ultimate realization of his agency, a move he had been planning long before his official departure. The passion in the fan responses was a direct counter-narrative to the mocking tweets, with one fan famously writing, "People in the QRTs acting like they know him. Evan is simply his English name. Let's be serious now." But even with the fan explanations, the controversy didn't dissipate. It morphed into a debate about intent and association. While some saw the name as a touching nod to his roots, others saw it as a definitive wall being built between him and ENHYPEN. This is where the conflict became messy. Critics argued that debuting under a completely new name was a clear signal that he wanted to wash his hands of the group identity entirely. It fueled a narrative that the split wasn't as amicable as the company claimed. If the departure was simply about musical direction, why the drastic rebranding? This line of thinking led to a clash between fans who were protesting for him to return to the group and those who accepted his departure. The Evan reveal effectively silenced the protests for his return, making them look naive. As one netizen pointed out, it was embarrassing for those protesting, because the name change signaled that he had moved on, whether the fans were ready or not. It forced the fandom to confront the reality that the Heeseung they knew, the one who harmonized perfectly within the group dynamic, was being retired by choice. Amidst the noise, the artist himself finally broke his silence, attempting to reclaim the narrative with a personal statement that leaned heavily into emotional authenticity. He described Evan as a name he had cherished since childhood, one holding his most precious memories. He spoke about reaching fans with music that expressed his honest and natural self, a phrase that feels loaded given the highly manufactured shared nature of idol groups. The statement was accompanied by the launch of a new Instagram account under the handle @H7Fied, which garnered hundreds of thousands of followers almost instantly. The visuals were stripped back, white t-shirts, minimal styling, raw and unfiltered. It was a stark contrast to the high-concept vampiric lore of ENHYPEN. This visual shift was Bellef Lab's way of signaling a new era, but it also served as ammunition for those who claimed he was trying too hard to distance himself from the polished idol image. The raw aesthetic, while artistically valid, was interpreted by critics as a rejection of his past work, further deepening the divide. The situation also sheds a harsh light on the mechanics of the K-pop industry and the difficult transition from group member to solo artist. Leaving a group like ENHYPEN, which operates under a massive global infrastructure, is a high-stakes gamble. The name change introduces a massive marketing hurdle. When a member leaves but keeps their stage name, they carry the brand equity with them. By changing his name to Evan, he effectively reset his brand recognition to zero for the general public, relying entirely on his existing fan base to migrate with him. This suggests a confidence in his artistry that is rare, or perhaps a miscalculation of the power of the ENHYPEN brand. The fact that Bellef Lab is managing him as a solo artist under a new name while still managing ENHYPEN creates an awkward dynamic. It puts the agency in the position of managing two competing narratives, the group moving forward as Six and the former member essentially rebooting his career. It raises questions about resource allocation and whether the agency is setting him up for success or setting him up to fail by stripping him of his most recognizable asset, his name. The reaction of the remaining ENHYPEN members and the group's future direction is the silent undercurrent of this entire controversy. With the group moving forward as Six, the contrast is inevitable. Every release, every concert will be measured against the absence of the member who used to be their center. For Evan, the pressure is immense. He has to prove that this identity shift was worth the controversy. The song Dial Tragedy was a hint, but a full solo career requires a consistency that fans haven't seen from him independently. The naysayers predicting Nugidom, the state of being a nobody in the industry, are waiting for him to stumble. They argue that the ENHYPEN machine was the engine of his success, and without it, he is just another soloist in a saturated market. Conversely, his supporters believe this is his moment to shine without the constraints of group concepts that perhaps stifled his creative growth. The tension between these two possibilities is what makes this situation so volatile.